What is up, everybody? Welcome to the F Nerds Podcast, Episode 4. My name is Nick Denizio, and sitting across from me is the always protected Martin Moreno.
Yep, trying to stay safe in this environment. There was a situation about 20 minutes from us, and the train that we take on a regular basis, or at least someone that we live with takes on a regular basis, goes to that somewhere spot where the fucking virus was. So, stay safe, people. Wash your hands. Protect. Don't touch your face. You know. All right, that's enough. I'm gonna take this off now. Yeah, just be careful, everyone out there, because shit's spreading, and we just gotta be careful. That's all.
So, with that, let's talk a little coronavirus and its effect on the movie business currently. As you saw yesterday, South by Southwest got canceled, which is a huge bummer.
Sucks, man. It's a bummer. It's heartbreaking. Because this is a stage for these smaller directors, storytellers to really shine and possibly get a break. So for something like this to happen really sucks.
Yeah, and the Green Knight was supposed to open up there, so the fact that that's not getting its premiere really sucks because I wanted to know how that's going to be. But
and not just films, but South by Southwest, it's almost like an arts festival.
Yes, you have a lot of like music and
music, some art, some film. It's just like celebrating art. So that's what we're about,
right?
Celebrating art and enjoying art. So for people to not be able to showcase what they want to do, it kind of like it really sucks. It's
definitely a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, though, the coronavirus is really starting to kick the movie business in the balls right now. Global theaters are starting to shut down in places like Italy and South Korea, and especially China, where the virus originated. And China's become such a massive market for Hollywood over the last couple of years that losing that is causing studios to like get cold feet on whether or not they should release their big studio movies. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them are considering pushing back the release dates to kind of.
And some are starting to push back.
Some are starting to push back with most recently No Time to Die, which
being
was
like the big obvious main one, so to speak.
That was definitely the big one. James Bond has such a massive appeal to the world, so they want to try to maximize as much money as they possibly can. That's why they pushed it back all the way to Thanksgiving, which really sucks. And with that push, they're expecting a loss between 30 and 50 million. Which is
crazy.
Yeah,
like that could potentially be your opening weekend right there.
Right.
So it's wild. First of all, just if this was Face Off, we'd all be fucked.
That video was hysterical.
Someone tweeted out a video of, for people who have seen Face Off and know what we're talking about, essentially how they're always touching each other's faces.
That was like how John Travolta says hello in that movie.
Yeah.
He just goes up and just...
Or like the family always does that. Remember at the end when the little kid comes in?
Yes.
And I'm like... But anyway, that video was hilarious. But yeah, what you were speaking about before, technically... I'm looking at this little fun chart here, and this is according to Forbes, I believe. Mm-hmm. So leading markets, this is in 2018, because I couldn't find one, like a really good one for last year. But essentially in terms of in US billion dollars, US essentially led in 2017 with 11.08, and the next was China with 9.15.
Yeah, China is like extremely close to overtaking the US as like the biggest movie market in the world.
You're essentially cutting the movie market almost in terms of the, I guess, like majority
gross revenue.
Exactly.
And everything. Yeah.
You're essentially taking one of the top dogs out.
Right.
And you were talking about South Korea before. That's number 4 according to this chart. It's obviously it goes from US 11.08, China 9.15, and then there's a major difference in the third place spot with Japan with 2.09.
Yeah,
Japan,
it drops off considerably after that.
Yeah, big time. And then from there, there's like slight decreases. It goes from Japan, United Kingdom, South Korea, India, all of which essentially are affected by now. Mm-hmm. And it's just every single day there's another case, another situation, something's going on. And it's crazy, man. It really is wild.
Yeah, and they, I think you were reading Forbes, they released an article the other day about how the global box office is expected to lose $5 billion. Because of this outbreak, which is kind of wild.
And I know there's already some AMCs in California who are starting to shut down too.
Yeah,
which is crazy. It's Cali. That's.
Well, what's funny is I saw in Italy that they're not shutting down their theaters, but they're requiring people who attend the theater to sit 3 seats. There's supposed to be a 3-seat gap between people sitting down.
It's crazy. So no one's getting blown in that movie. No hand jobs in Italy for a while. But also in other news, like in terms of sports, they're essentially fans aren't allowed to attend any sporting events for the next month.
They were talking about that for March Madness too, like playing games without anybody in the arena.
And not just that, but like we were talking about California, now there's rumors that it might happen in LA. Like the LA Lakers are now.
We saw what LeBron said though, right?
Yeah, he's
not playing with that audience. Which is
kind of stupid. LeBron, like, grow up. I understand, but like, shut the fuck up. However, it's like, yeah, it's this thing is just affecting everything. The movie business obviously it's one of them, but it just, in terms of like a general impact, it's much bigger than anything that we're talking about right now, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is really crazy, and hopefully this really doesn't it doesn't linger, because this virus is a fucking lingerer.
Yeah, fucking lingerer, man.
Yeah, totally.
Linger.
And things kind of go back to normal, and everything can resume how it was, because now the worry is it going to affect the Cannes Film Festival? And
I mean, Canada right now is starting to develop cases. It could affect TIFF. We don't know the situation a couple months from now, and even though James Bond got delayed till November, we don't know what's going to happen in November. This is according to John Oliver, but still, I'm sure there's some truth to it. But according to the episodes that we were watching of John Oliver, it's like a year from 18 months out in terms of like a legit cure.
Right.
So it's still very early on. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, just because you're changing your movie, just because you're changing the movie date, like doesn't guarantee that it's going to be
safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For all we know, it could be worse. Hopefully not.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting situation that we got going on right now.
Yeah, we can only hope that it clears up very soon.
Actually, the Lakers just clinched a playoff berth, I believe, with last night's win. So that's probably why LeBron was talking shit. He's like, I don't care. I don't have to play because I'm already in the playoffs. So fucking LeBron.
Fucking LeBron.
It's right, though, because he took me really far in a fantasy basketball championship one year. So I will forever love him for that. And in terms of future films, we got movies like Mulan, which is essentially very dependent on the Chinese market.
Right.
So even though it's sort of Mulan, and I guess Disney at this point is sort of a brand, so it will make its money. But in regards to the overall amount of money that it could make and its overall sort of success, could possibly be affected by what's going on in China.
It's definitely going to take a hit.
Yeah.
I think as of right now, Mulan is projected to open in the U.S. between 85 and 100 million.
And I'm excited for that movie.
It looks awesome.
That's my big sister's future feature film debut, and I'm excited to see what Jazzy's going to do in that movie. I'm really excited for her.
But from the trailers and everything, it looks really cool. Could possibly be Disney's best live action remake. Mm-hmm. But losing China is going to be a huge hit for it. I don't know what the budget on it was, but it looks expensive.
It looks expensive. It looks but it looks very like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon vibe. So it looks like a very artistic, but which kind of could mean very expensive. There's a lot of sort of production design, stunts, all that stuff that goes into it.
Yeah, so even though like there's a ton of CG in the trailer, it looks like that they did a lot of stuff practically as well.
Yeah, so
really
I'm assuming a lot of overseas. I'm assuming it's a big budget.
Yeah,
like keeping the long story short.
Right.
And anything else that you want to talk about in regards to this whole situation?
No, nothing really. Just kind of what I said before. I really hope that this clears up quick, and we can kind of hope that things go back to normal with, especially in the movies and stuff, because I just hate it when, the movies are affected for shit like this.
Right. So, see, Nick doesn't care about people dying. He just cares about the movies being affected. I'm just kidding. This is a good guy. But, yeah, hopefully everything will get better soon. And be careful out there. Stop licking train poles, subway poles, all that stuff. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. And, just be careful out there, everyone.
So, speaking of viruses that just won't go away, let's talk about Star Wars.
Ooh, that was a great transition.
All right.
Back to that Chris Pratt gif.
Yeah. Recently, details have leaked on the Star Wars Rise of Skywalker novelization, and all kinds of things are coming out. One of which being that Emperor Palpatine himself is a clone.
Right.
And that Rey's father is apparently a failed Palpatine clone. So, kicking it over to you as our resident Star Wars expert.
I'm already boiling.
What do we think of all this mess that's going on right now?
I'm already like my heart's like bumping. It's bumping. Okay, actually, first of all, before we get into all this, do you want to take an adventure with me?
Yeah, let's take an adventure.
All right, let's hop in this Millennium Falcon.
Okay.
Let's gun to 88 and let's go back a couple months. Not that long, like 3-4 months. December 20th of 2019 to be more specific.
Okay.
When The Rise of Skywalker came out. And this was essentially the last film in the Skywalker saga. It's a film franchise that spanned over 40 years through various films and gave us some of the most beloved, cherished, iconic characters of all time. In this new movie, we find out that one of said characters is coming back, and that is Palpatine, Darth Sidious himself. And cool, I'm all about it. I love Palpatine, like great, let's do it. However, we don't really find out how he returned. Or at least I can't really recall. I remember trying to...
Well, they obviously kept it a mystery in the trailers.
Right.
And then you get to the movie and you're watching it and you're like, all right, how did he come back? Are they going to explain it?
There's like a brief conversation between him and Kylo, but it doesn't really go anywhere.
No.
It just kind of like... Ooh, it just kind of like, it stops there. Now, I said this last night in our Way Back review. I'm one of those people who, I'm not crazy about sort of spoon feeding when it comes to like cinematic storytelling. I believe that the respected audience of whatever movie they're watching is smart enough to understand what's going on in the movie. All right. However, in this situation, yeah, fucking put me in a high chair, spoon feed me, like not the whole thing, just the tip. Just to see how it feels, just so I can get an idea of what's going on, of how he came back. Because
essentially, when you take that character and you throw him down the...
I was going to get to that.
You get to that?
I was going to get to that. Yeah, because like, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like, this is Palpatine, one of the most iconic Star Wars characters, in general, one of the most iconic characters of all time, and we don't really get an explanation of how he turned. That's the movie for you. Fine.
Right.
Before we go back to the future, let's stay in 2019, okay? We're in our Millennium Falcon. We're cruising through light speed through the holiday season. And shortly after the movie, I believe it's actually the same day of the movie, the visual dictionary for The Rise of Skywalker comes out. Okay, now for those who don't know what the visual dictionary is, it is essentially a book with a whole bunch of fun stuff about the movie. It's got some information, some details, some behind-the-scenes photos.
A little bit of tidbits.
Some concept art, stuff like that, okay? And according to the visual dictionary, we find out how Palpatine returned. For starters, I hate that. I hate that you're essentially telling your audience to read or go to another source to find out something that happened in the movie. I feel like as a major motion picture, you should have enough context and information to support your storytelling. You shouldn't have to, like, me, I read all the books because I'm a fucking nerd.
He said it!
But that's not everyone else in the movie theater. And yes, the books do make the movies more fun, but you shouldn't tell your audience to, like, rely on that kind of stuff, you know? And in the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary, we find out how he returned. It turns out that his body, like you were saying, his body, which was thrown down a fucking shaft, it was being electrocuted as it was falling, and then
down.
blew up in space. Turns out that his body was recovered by the Sith Eternals. Now, let me ask you a quick question. Do you know who the Sith Eternals are?
I have no idea who the fuck the Sith Eternals
Exactly.
are.
You know why? Because it was never explained in the fucking movie. Okay. So, the Sith Eternal essentially recovered his body, brought it back to Exegol, which is the main planet featured in the movie, and essentially brought him back to life, like rejuvenated him and all that good stuff. Meanwhile, while they were rejuvenating him, this is a great line that I love. Where is it? Okay, so for decades, they toiled in secret to create the Palpatine's massive fleet. Did you know that they were the ones who created the massive fleet?
Nope.
Exactly, because it was never explained. And just to go back to about the Sith Eternal, we don't know who they are, but they were like the awfully CGI people in the stands at the end of the movie.
Oh my god.
See, you don't even know. It was like, that was a Sith Eternal.
Can I say something about that scene? At first I was like, because it was so weird that when Rey showed up at the end to confront Palpatine, that she was basically inside a soccer stadium and there were all these people. It was
literally like a concert.
It was like a concert. I was like, who the fuck are all these people? I didn't know there was this many people there.
Yeah,
like,
and at that point I figured they were like clones.
Right.
And I figured that Palpatine was being taken, because we find out it was a snow clone, so I'm like, okay, these are all clones, they're taking care of Palpatine.
Right.
But no, it turns out that it's this Eternal, this like kind of cult, and they recovered his body, which was electrocuted, thrown in a shaft, and
then blown up.
Took it back to Exegol and kind of through science rejuvenated him, brought him back to life, and built him an army. That all happened, but we never essentially...
We never saw it. We never saw it, they never told us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sick of December 2019. Let's get back in the Falcon, gun into 88, and come back to... Actually, you can probably stay in 2019 because 2020 does not fuck with us. It has been a year. It has been a year. But we're back, 2020. And a few days ago, we get news from this novelization. Now, for the people who don't know, the novelization is essentially the movie in book form.
Yes.
And like you said, we find out that Palpatine was a clone this whole time. So pretty much everything that the visual dictionary said
Was wrong.
throw it away. Throw it away. It doesn't matter, because according to the novelization, Palpatine that we saw in the movie was a vessel. It was essentially a vessel harvesting Palpatine's spirit. But power. It's so strong that it's essentially breaking down the vessel, which is why it's all fucked up and like decrepit. And right off the bat, I don't like the idea of Palpatine being a clone. However, just because something does not look good on paper doesn't mean that it's not going to translate well to the movies. At that point, it's all about execution.
Right. And the thing I would say about that too is like I don't mind the idea of him, of like his like essence, his dark force taking over a body, because that was what I assumed Snoke was going to be. I thought maybe that was kind of like who Snoke was. So the fact that they went that route isn't the worst thing, but the fact that it just comes out as saying like, oh, he's a clone is just like...
And not just that, but we didn't even know about it.
Right.
So I'm saying, so it might not read well, but at that point, like we said, it's all about executing your material, and it could work. But we didn't know about this. And now fast forward to a few days later, and we get another report that apparently Rey's dad was a failed Palpatine clone.
Which is so stupid.
Which is, first of all, it's not only stupid, but it's like a big fuck you to Rian Johnson, essentially further retconning everything that happened in The Last Jedi,
Right.
and essentially saying another fuck you to the whole notion that everything is canon, everything is connected. No, because to recap, we have A, Palpatine in the movie. We have B, Palpatine in the movie, who we don't know how he came back.
Right.
We have B, he came back through the Sith Eternal. They recovered his body, whatever was left, and took it to the greatest spot on Exegol, and through the galaxy's finest masseuses and handstone, they kind of rejuvenated and brought him back.
Just went to a day spot for a little bit.
Went to a day spot for a while, And mind you, this is like, in terms of chronological movie time, this is like almost 30 years.
Right.
So he's been gone a while. And you don't care to explain how he came back. So we have that, and now we have the novelization saying, oh no, it's a clone. Two stories are contradicting, two of which we never got in the movie, and it just makes you ask, like, what the fuck?
Exactly.
Like, this, it goes back to my favorite... I gotta relax for a second, okay? But it goes back to one of my favorite metaphors, and that's the SpongeBob fine dining metaphor.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, there's this episode of SpongeBob SquarePants when one of Squidward's enemy is coming to the Krusty Krab, and he tells SpongeBob, like, hey, forget everything you know about fine dining, because we gotta put on a fucking show, all right? So SpongeBob does that. He forgets everything he knows about fine dining. He puts on a great dinner, puts on a great service, but then he freaks out when they ask him what his name is. Because he doesn't know his name. Because he threw it all away. And then we get that great scene. We go into his little brain and we see all these little SpongeBobs running around. It's a madhouse. They're freaking out. Papers are flying everywhere. Everything's on fire because they don't know his name. We threw out his name! And that, my friend, is what I picture Lucasfilm to be. It is obvious that it is just a mess behind the scenes. There's no clear collaboration between its creators. There's no clear communication between its creators. And everything just, like, we already knew that there was no kind of narrative through line between the movies. But now in this, like, why isn't there anyone saying, bro, you can't put that in the book because A, it wasn't in the movie, and B, it's contradicting what we put out in another book. Like, where are these people in charge? Where are these people who make these calls? Like, everything is just like, it's sloppy. And I'm talking like Jabba the Hutt making out with like a Princess Leia blow up sex doll, like sloppy, like for real, my guy.
Woof.
Oh, woof.
That's not a picture I wanted in my head.
It's in there. But something, it just like makes you wonder. You're Disney, all right? One of your, I guess, sort of like outlets, or if you want to call it that, or one of your properties is Marvel. And, you've seen what they've done in terms of the storytelling. Why couldn't you replicate it? I'm not saying copy it like exactly as they did, but almost in terms of like structure, like, JJ, come in, do your thing, but hit these points. Ryan, you come in and hit these points because it feeds off of what JJ did. And then whoever did that, well, I guess it was Colin Trevorrow at that point. And then Colin, you come in and you hit these points to wrap it up. That way, the storyline is structured, it's grounded, and every movie has their own sort of creative identity in regards to the director and in regards to the storyteller. But instead, that was not the case. Instead, they just came in, like, did their own thing. It was a mess, and just like the way this sort of new regime has handled Lucasfilm and Star Wars, it's like, it's just disappointing.
It's also surprising because the level of talent that's involved, you wouldn't think that it would be this mismanaged.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you have, especially like people always shit on Kathleen Kennedy, which I understand why, because it all falls under her.
And she also makes a lot of stupid comments.
She's
like, we can't be like Marvel because we don't have years of comics or books. Are you fucking kidding me?
Well, she's also the one that's steering the ship, so the blame does go to her. But she's been behind films like, you know, Indiana Jones and a lot of Spielberg movies and things like that. So she's been around for a long time. She knows what it takes to make a good movie.
She's a great producer.
So I don't understand where the disconnect is and what's been going on behind the scenes.
It's just a situation where, like, you have people who know the movie business but don't know the material. That's really what it comes down to. Like, in Mandalorian, you have people who are in charge but they know the material. And for example, in Marvel, Kevin Feige, before he did Iron Man, he had a bunch of producing credits on like Daredevil, X-Men, all those movies. So he knew from like a movie making standpoint or a movie producing standpoint, he knew what to do. But he also has that notion of he understands the characters.
Right.
He can make the call of saying like, Guardians of the Galaxy won't work right now, but it'll work maybe 5 years down the road.
Well, the only thing that I would say to that is I understand what you're saying in terms of knowing the material and being able to, you know, incorporate that into the film. But with Rise of Skywalker just is not a good film. It's not good filmmaking. It's not good on a production level. It's not good. You know what I mean? Like, if Last Jedi fucks with the canon, I understand that in terms of the story, but it's a better film overall. Even Force Awakens is a better film overall. It's better movie making.
That's what I was saying. At that point, you really just have to, because you can literally make the argument that, well, you can't make the argument. It's true that essentially Rise of Skywalker is a direct sequel to The Force Awakens.
It absolutely is.
JJ did his story.
Yes.
And it makes you wonder, like, why didn't, if this was his story, fine, but why wasn't it thought through beforehand?
Right.
Before all these movies were made?
Yeah, if your plan was to bring Palpatine back, you should have like started sprinkling those little nuggets in Force Awakens to kind of give that
set
hint,
it up.
Which tells me that it wasn't the plan.
No, it wasn't the plan.
They did it as a last-ditch effort.
That's what I'm telling you. Like, it was just like, you come into your thing, Ryan, you come into your thing, and then we'll figure it out down the road of how we can connect together.
Right.
And instead, it was just like this. Everything was just like disappointing. And I know about disappointment because my dad. All right, nothing but broken promises with that guy.
Oh my god.
But it's just it's rough, man.
No, and it's like I told you this before too. Is regardless of the path that The Force Awakens and Last Jedi were on, Rise of Skywalker had the ability to strengthen those two movies.
And it should have.
And it should have brought the whole thing home. And I also felt it was a last-ditch effort to market the movie as the end of the Skywalker saga. I feel like that was also not in the cards originally, and they did that as a marketing push as well, to try to get as many people in the seats as they possibly could, to milk it for as much as they could.
Which barely broke. I think it made under 1.1 billion, which is,
I think it did, yeah.
ridiculous. You're talking about you're talking about a film franchise, like I said, spans over 40 years.
Yep.
And it should have made Avengers Endgame
Like
Infinity
level.
War type of numbers, right? It should have cracked $2 billion.
Even more, possibly more, because when you talk about the very end of the Skywalkers and how much history there is within like our culture, like these are like icons, it should have made boatloads of money. It should have been the first movie to break $3 billion worldwide.
I 100% agree with you. It definitely should have. And look, Bob Iger recently stepped down not too long ago. We found out that he's stepping down as CEO, so someone else is coming on. Whether there's going to be some Star Wars changes is yet to be seen. You know, because from a business standpoint, the movies made money, but from a sort of like quality standpoint, they weren't really the best. So it kind of leaves a question as to like what's going to happen. Are they going to make changes behind the scenes or and whatnot?
Well, what I would say to that is there could very well be a change now that this new CEO is coming in. He could very well make changes to, you know, who's running certain, you know, aspects of Disney. Mm-hmm. And I would say since The Mandalorian was such a successful endeavor and how much, you know, the fans loved it, I mean, how much we loved it, I think if I was in this position and I was going to make a change, I would take that Mandalorian crew and put them in charge of Lucasfilm in general. I would, let Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and I think there's somebody else that was also part of the creative team for The Mandalorian.
Creative team, I don't know. There was Kelly Chap, but she was a director. I'm not sure in terms of like Star Wars creators, Pablo Hidalgo.
I'm talking about like the producers behind the scenes. I know it was Filoni, it was Favreau. I think there was one more person, but regardless, I would put them in charge because they seem like they have a really good idea of how to incorporate. I mean, just look at how what The Mandalorian did in terms of not only adapting the story and making it feel like a Western, which is really cool, but there's so much like history incorporated into it. In all these different episodes, and so many little nods to certain things, and the coolest one being the Black Saber at the very end,
right? Which ties awesome. Back to Rebels, ties back to Clone Wars.
Right. So you're incorporating all this stuff, and it's tying everything together. And these people seem like they know.
And that's another situation where you can tell that episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then the last two, where the OG story that they kind of came up with. I believe it's episode 4, 5, and 6, which are kind of the flavor of the week episodes. But even that, it's fun. Some of them, yes, granted, they are probably the weaker of probably 3 weaker episodes, but they're still fun. There's still a lot to get from it. And something else is that they released a new line of books called Star Wars High Republic. And they released a little fun video with that announcement, and essentially a writer's room that was established at Skywalker Ranch, in 2018. And all these great writers like Claudia Gray, they're just there, essentially, these people who know Star Wars, right. And they're mapping out how they're going to do these new lines of books. I'm like, why didn't you do that for the movie?
Right.
Why? Where the fuck? Because for Marvel, there's this great Marvel featurette towards the big Marvel Studios tenure, where there's a room full of you can see these comics with all these post-its in there, pretty much saying all these flashcards on the board and everything. Essentially, they were mapping out how everything was going to.
And pulling details from everything.
Right. And Tony Stark says it in Avengers 2, that up there, that's the end game.
That up there, that's the end game.
That is not a fucking coincidence. They
Right.
knew what they were doing.
Yep.
And again, that's what I'm saying. If you're Disney and Marvel is under your banner and you've seen what they're doing, why couldn't you have applied that to Star Wars? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it.
Yeah. It's an absolute mismanagement.
It is. But supposedly, we don't know. There's rumors now, or there were reports a while ago that this J.D. Diller was going to come on and develop a new movie with a Marvel with the Luke Cage writer.
Right.
So, and aside from that, you still have the Rian Johnson supposedly trilogy going on.
Right. Which I still don't know if that's going to happen. Especially
you still have the Kevin Feige rumored development. There's still a whole.
Taika's supposed to
do
his
one
own
too.
movie.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on that we still don't know about.
Yeah.
And I think with this kind of change of management, we're going to slowly going to get these kind of more information and details as to what the fuck is going on.
Right.
Woo!
How you feeling, man? You all right?
I'm good. I'm proud of myself.
Hey,
I contained myself.
You got through that pretty well.
There were moments where I wanted to really.
I was a little nervous. I was I thought I was gonna have to step in, and I was not gonna know what the fuck I was gonna talk about.
No. But yeah.
So let's move on to something a little bit more pleasant.
Woo!
For 2 episodes in a row, we've talked about the Batman, and fuck it, let's talk about it for the 3rd one in a row.
Actually, we just talked about a small independent franchise. Let's talk about another one,
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that many people know about Star Wars.
So Matt Reeves trying to he's been doing a good job of getting out in front of, shitty set photo leaks.
He's smart.
He did the Batsuit reveal, and then all of a sudden all the Batsuit, set photos came out. Mm-hmm. Now he drops one of the big ones where he shows the Batmobile, which is fucking awesome. I dropped a couple of pictures, and I'm sure they're going to start shooting with it soon, which is why he dropped the photos of it.
I'm excited to see those videos of it racing down the street.
They're just shooting down the street and everything. So take me through it, man. What'd you think?
Okay, I have mixed feelings.
Okay.
I have mixed feelings about it, but mostly overall positive. I think the sort of negative thoughts that I have from the Batmobile photos are if this makes any sense, come from a familiarity with the Batmobile that sort of us fans have, and some of the general audience too have. I feel actually we spoke about the sort of shift that happened in Batman's character in the late 80s, early 90s with the Frank Miller, Alan Moore comics, of how it essentially took a turn to a much more darker, serious character. And I think everything post that has essentially been the Batman that we all kind of know and love nowadays. Essentially, whatever we're getting in all forms of medium, I think is a little bit of an offspring of what happened in those like late 80s, early 90s years. And I think since then, we've kind of gotten a sort of similar design of the Batmobile as a sort of like sleek, state-of-the-art, almost like a kind of like almost like a futuristic design, and very expensive in terms of all like the gadgets and the crooks and crannies of everything that goes into the Batmobile. And I think when you look at like the Burton Batmobiles, like the Schumacher Batmobiles, it kind of falls into that sort of template of that kind of design. I think the first one that kind of really broke away from that, or in terms of giving us something that was very resemblance to like an actual car, was the Batman animated show. Not this series, but I don't know if you remember the Batman. It came out in like 2004.
It was called The Batman.
The Batman,
right?
yeah.
And it had a certain animated style to it too.
Yeah,
right?
and like the Joker was different, had like crazy hair.
Yeah,
There's a movie that's like, it's like The Batman. Like, it was fun. It was a really fun show. But like his car in that show looked like a Lambo, like a straight up Lamborghini, just like a little bit tweaked with some like high tech designs and some gadgets. And I think that was kind of like I said, post sort of Miller Alan Moore situation, and everything that we've gotten to that point was kind of something in terms of like shows and movies, was something that we got that was very kind of reminiscent to an actual automobile,
right,
being the Lamborghini. I think Nolan kind of broke away from that and gave us his sort of tank.
Yeah.
But even that to me was very reminiscent of Batman, because it reminded me of what Frank Miller did in The Dark Knight Returns. Remember how he's got that big
vehicle, yeah.
Right, and I think something else that's interesting in regards to that tank is if you think of the times, that was like early 2000s, like 2004, 2005, and that was a time where kind of like the war with the Middle East was still kind of fresh. So obviously Nolan's take on Batman was this more kind of modern and kind of grounded approach to Batman and his universe. And it made sense that Batman would have this vehicle, or at least his Batman, because to him, his Bruce Wayne was someone who had like kind of like the state-of-the-art, kind of cutting edge, because he has this kind of cutting edge company. So it makes sense that he has all these technologies. So it would make sense that for those times, there was a company developing a sort of like tank that can fuck shit up in like a war zone or something like that. And then you fast forward to essentially what Snyder's Batmobile, which to me is almost like the little brother of the Nolan Batmobile. The Nolan Batmobile is kind of like this big, brooding sort of boxer. And to me, the Snyder Batmobile feels like something a lot leaner, more agile, kind of like a martial artist.
Right.
And it almost instantly became like my favorite Batmobile design. Like I immediately fell in love with it. To me, it immediately felt like, yes, like that's a Batmobile. Like I buy it. Again, the Nolan, even though it's different, I still bought it. It still gave me like Frank Miller vibes, and even had like this kind of low to the ground sort of sleek design for a big vehicle. So even that alone, to me, worked as a Batmobile. This, however, as its own thing, if you were just to show me a picture of this Batmobile, it wouldn't really necessarily work for me as a Batmobile. It does kind of fall more in line of like something from Mad Max, or from Fast and Furious, which you've seen a lot, or even some like post-apocalyptic like film franchise like Death Race or something, like I can picture this being in there. It's almost like similar to the car that Dom had at the end of was it Fast 9? No, Fast 8, I'm sorry, when they're on the snow.
Oh yeah.
Remember that car that he had at the end?
Yeah.
It almost like reminded me of that too. So in terms of a standalone sort of design in regards to Batman, it doesn't really work for me. However, in regards to the aesthetic, the Batman aesthetic that Matt Reeves is creating and the sort of world that he's building, it works for me in that sense. I really appreciate it in regards to his world and his take on Batman. And for that alone, I do like it a lot, and I'm excited to see it kind of like in context with everything else that's going on.
And I think the way it looks really gives a sense of Matt Reeves' approach to Batman as a character.
Mm-hmm.
This has a very do-it-yourself vibe.
Which is also in line with what we saw from the Bat Cycle.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right, same exact thing. And we know that Matt Reeves is leaning more towards like a noir style, following a very detective, focused Batman. And it takes place, we're not seeing his origin, but we're seeing like the early years.
Yeah, like the second year, I believe.
The first couple years, which is And I've been thinking to myself too about it because it does look like somebody made it, but not that a billionaire made it.
Right. That's what I'm telling you.
But the thing that I'm kind of getting at is I'm wondering what the state of Gotham is in right now, because it's only Batman's second year, right?
Or if he's actually utilizing his resources,
right? Or if he's just trying to stay so incognito that he's worried that maybe a super sleek look, is too. Maybe it's going to give him away, or
That's what I'm saying. Like in terms of like the familiarity that we have from a Batmobile,
right.
If you took that familiarity and put it in here, it wouldn't work.
Right.
So I'm saying this works. And like I said, Nolan's Batman, his take on it was the sort of guy or hero, whatever, who's taking advantage of all his resources. He's got a cutting edge company and he's like using that to the T. This one, Reeve's take is clearly not that. And
right.
Or maybe it could be, but whatever we're seeing is in line to how homemade the costume feels and how kind of homemade the bike feels, which I really like. Everything kind of seems like it's working in this world that he's creating.
Right. Well, that was what I was kind of getting at before was what's the state of Gotham right now? Because it's only Batman's second year, and we're going into this movie with all the villains established already. So I feel like Gotham is in a state of chaos right now.
It looks grimy, and they released some set photos, and shit looks.
But if you're just going off of the photos of the Batmobile being parked, like just the way it looks, like the whole vibe I'm getting is I feel like everything's just in complete chaos.
And like some post-apocalyptic shit. So I'm saying it feels like it should be in Mad Max or like Death Race,
So I'm kind of like I'm really curious to see what he's kind of going for with this. Like what's civilization like? What's daily life like? And I'm really, really pumped to see. And it's gonna be dark. It's gonna be so dark.
You can tell from those set photos that they released, like they said that they were filming in like an old abandoned psychiatric hospital, and it wasn't clarified whether that was Arkham Asylum or not. But that shit looked like scary and like super sketchy. And I just think this sort of world that he's creating in terms of like environment, it to me, it feels like it's a more almost like modernized take on like Tim Burton's world, or like a modernized take on the Batman animated series world, like this kind of like Art Deco kind of creepy, dark environment, and almost like a contemporary take on the sort of like Silver and Bronze Age comics. Like we said vintage so much in the last episode.
Vintage. So adorable.
And this to me just feels like a throwback, like an old school kind of Batman vibes, but contemporary, as if like, as if it would be today. And that to me is what's really, that to me is it's what's very exciting about what I'm seeing, because it just makes me feel like this shit is not going to be pretty.
No.
And I love that, because to me, Gotham should not be pretty. Gotham is like, that's where you get mugged.
Right.
Metropolis not. In Gotham, you get mugged, you get killed, like all this shit happens. That's why his parents were killed. And this is all leading towards that. And I feel like we were definitely going to get like a dark film, and I'm so pumped.
I know. But I also do like the fact that it is a car, though. Because I think early Batman comics, it was just a car. Like he didn't have like a Batmobile per se. It was just like a car.
It was a car with like maybe a few flaps. Like it wasn't excessive.
So this is kind of like that vibe that I'm getting. Like it has that same exact look. Because if you look on the car itself, it does towards the back. It does kind of have
the rays,
almost like wings that look like they stick out a little bit. It's also really cool that the engine is all the way in the back, which makes you wonder what's in the front.
Probably nothing.
I don't know, man. You don't know.
I mean, that's true.
There could be something there.
You mean like in terms of like
weaponry or something like that?
Okay. I guess in that sense, yeah. But that's what I was saying. Like the kind of shift, the post Frank Miller as we see it, everything that we've kind of known has been in regards to that. In terms of mood, it stays in line with the sort of post Frank Miller shift. But in terms of like aesthetic and everything that we're seeing and environment, it falls back into a sort of like old school, like Bronze Age, Silver Age, some like Neil Adams vibes, like that kind of shit. And it's exciting because it's nothing that we've really seen before. And I think the TV show Gotham, regardless of what you think about it, I think that did a pretty good job of sort of establishing that aesthetic too. Like everything kind of felt like almost timepiece or kind of throwback, even the way they dressed, the cars, everything, but it felt modernized. It felt like contemporary. And I think that Reeves has a clear vision of the world that he's creating, and I just can't wait for more content to come out, because everything that he drops is just so exciting.
And also, I don't think anyone's actually really talked about this, but this is the first time we're seeing Robert Pattinson in the actual Batsuit, which is pretty cool.
It's exciting, and I think the bird's eye view photo, the one that one doesn't really work for me too much because I feel like he looks very stiff in that photo.
He kind of looks like an action figure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's just like his back is like straight up, and there's no like really any form of like you just don't get any kind of sense of range. However, in the other photo, the one when the Blade Runner 2049's photo, as we speak, the one that's drawn a lot of comparisons to that. That one to me is probably my favorite out of the three that they've released because that shows like the back angle and shows him almost like kind of moving into the almost like as he's becoming one with it.
Right.
Because like Bernie Mac said in Transformers,
It's a mystical bond between man and machine.
and Batman wouldn't be Batman without his Batmobile, and the fact that we're getting a souped up fucking muscle car almost as his Batmobile, I think speaks volumes. I think it just shows to, I think it just like speaks to the sort of gritty and dark film that we're gonna get, and I'm pumped.
I know, I can't wait either. It's going to be awesome when it finally comes out. Anything else you want to talk about? Any other points you want to hit?
No, man, I think we pretty much covered everything. And yeah, it was a good episode.
Yeah.
Good episode.
Yeah,
good vibes. Contained myself,
Yeah.
Contained my rage and contained my excitement.
Didn't go too over the top.
Didn't go too over the top for the most part, except for the daddy issues comment, but just came out, just how. But I want to give one shout out before we wrap up.
All right.
I want to give a shout out to JG Desserts.
JG Desserts.
Yeah, we got some incredible cookies, and they always just make some good shit. I guess go to their Instagram page. I think it's at JG Desserts. I would imagine so.
Come on, how you gonna give them a shout out and not have their credentials on?
I am such a slacker. It's okay though because I'm gonna say JG_desserts. Go follow them and go get some tasty treats for them because the shit they make is on point.
I'm also going to give a shout out myself to our buddy James Wagner, aka Wags, who was desperately looking for a shout out last week and we didn't give him one.
We had kind of a bit of a live audience. But yeah, I'm sorry about that, Wags. We're going to give you guys a shout out and we'll know if you watch the episode once you say something. So if you don't say anything, motherfucker,
we're going to know.
We're going to know.
Watching.
We're going to know.
And I'm going to revoke the shout out.
That's right. We'll fix it in post. We'll take it out.
So guys, thank you for joining us on episode 4 of the F Nerds podcast. As always, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel. And if you enjoyed watching, give us a little thumbs up.
Just a little fondle, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Not
just a little bit.
Girl, just a little bit.
All right, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.